The voice of sharing. 旅人的香。
ASEAN Breakfast Call. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And this is Arlene.
And this is Grace.
And of course, we are going to continue our ASEAN Breakfast Call with more news from Southeast Asia. Yesterday was Deepavali.
It kind of felt weird to have Deepavali as a public holiday in the middle of the week.
Really?
Yeah, because it's like a public holiday. We all rested and celebrated our Deepavali. And then coming back to work on Thursday, it feels like as if today is actually Monday.
It is true. Although today is Thursday, I didn't feel like today is Thursday. I felt like, oh, another day.
Exactly.
But yeah, tomorrow is Friday as usual. So we'll be having a lot of interesting excitement on Friday because it's the day before Saturday. Am I making sense here?
Yeah. Well, how was your Deepavali?
Well, I went to Klang. It was interesting because I do have different relatives coming from a very multicultural background. So some of my Serani relatives intermarried with Hindu. So they some of them converted to Hinduism.
What's the special dish that you had for Deepavali?
Well, for Serani, they love to eat this one called curry devil and vindaloo.
Curry devil.
Yeah,
wow,
it's
sounds so
devil.
spicy.
Sounds very spicy, but it's nice. Well, to start off our discussion today, I just want to highlight one interesting thing that we found on the net is about the Lonely Planet. They release a list of country that is best to go to travel. And guess which country tops the list?
It's very close to Malaysia.
Yes, it is. It's interesting because we actually reposted it on Facebook to just garner any views, and a lot of people were dumbfounded. We were asking Singaporeans, do you think your country is the best country to travel to? Apparently, they might not agree. But maybe for travelers, Singapore is considered one of the safest in Southeast Asia.
That
and
is very interesting.
one of the most accessible as well.
And then with its unique style of a cuisine and a culture, this Lonely Planet, I don't know why they call it Lonely Planet, selected the Southeast Asia's destination. And then, well, it is true that Singapore also has pretty much diverse culture there with a lot of different races, and then more people are traveling into Singapore in terms of education and the business purposes as well.
We always say Malaysia is truly Asia, but apparently Singapore is truly Asia in this case, because the reason why it is rated as the best country to travel to is because of its unique style of cuisine and culture. Also, it is a Southeast Asian destination for an escape from the typical urban landscape, as well as providing ample opportunity to explore the island. In addition, Singapore also will celebrate 50 years of independence next year, so definitely there will be a grand celebration.
Exactly. And then in Singapore, in terms of government, economic wise, it's growing. And then not to forget, Singapore is actually the most expensive city in the world. And with that, but still, it's not going to be lonely anymore because it is selected as one of the best countries to visit in 2015.
We are not very sure how they rate the criteria, but it seems like they give fair opportunity for smaller countries like Singapore and also the bigger ones. They also give recognition to diverse region, not just Singapore, but also in Africa. For example, Namibia. I think probably a lot of people might not know what is Namibia, but it is a country, a very young African country, filled with a range of wildlife and natural beauty, and they are being rated as number 2 as the best country, the second best country to visit in 2015.
That's interesting. And then Singapore was followed by last year's winner, which was Brazil. And then the World Cup was hosted there. And also it will be the next country to host the 2016 Olympic Games.
So perhaps they rate Singapore is because next year
It's their Independence Day.
It is their independence. But for other country, it is because of their culture and history. For example, number 3, Lithuania. It is one of the countries in the Baltic region, and a lot of people might not know that, but it has a lot of Soviet history artifact that makes the country really interesting to visit. When you go to Europe, you always want to go to the Western Europe, for example, the UK, UK, France, Italy, and all that. But a lot of people don't know the Baltic region is also very interesting, has very historical monuments that people would love to go. And other countries that were in the list are Nicaragua from South America, and also Ireland from, of course, the Europe.
Because of it's got the stunning sceneries, and it managed to blend with its old traditional customs with the cosmopolitan atmosphere. It's amazing, like describing how this contemporary Irish are just friendly and welcoming.
Do you know another Southeast Asian country is also in the top 10 list?
Myanmar.
Well, I hope it's Myanmar, but our neighbor, the Philippines.
Philippines.
It is number 8 best country to visit in 2015, which is next year. The reason why Philippines is the choice and not Indonesia, Bali, which I'm quite interested to know why, but from their reason is because of the variety of islands. Do you know that Philippines have 7,000 islands, and it has a lot of wildlife, a lot of really interesting demographic and geography, and also a lot of people are there. They have this kind of very relaxed attitude, so you don't feel the kind of stress that you might feel living in going touring around in an urban area.
That's another thing to point out. When it comes to Asian countries, I mean, we have lots of countries within our Asian continent, but then compared to South Korea and Japan, to Philippines or Vietnam, the environment is so different, and
so
the people
relaxed.
Attitudes, how they behave is so much different from each other. Yeah.
But even though a lot of countries, have the potential to be one of the best travel country in 2015, but certain countries in Africa might not be able to even be on the list. It is because these countries are being somehow infested with the Ebola disease, and the Ebola disease is spreading all over the world. A lot of countries are holding talks just to understand what Ebola is all about and how to contain the disease.
And apparently in Malaysia, travelers claim there's no Ebola screening at the airport, which is quite scary because there should be a checkup.
Do you know Malaysia has a lot of Africans coming to Malaysia either to study, to visit, or just to work here? And it's interesting that Malaysian government, even though it has promised to go forward in terms of trying to contain the Ebola, they haven't done anything that much yet.
Well, a lot of people do say that Ebola will not, less likely will be affecting this country because of the distance and also because of the temperature. But you never know how this disease can, mutate itself to become something else and then come to Malaysia.
And the thing is, you would never know you have Ebola until 3 weeks down the lane, where you already at your very severe stage, when you're about to die, then you will know that, oh, I have Ebola. So it is a very dangerous disease because you will never know the early stage that you have contracted Ebola.
So one of the travelers quoted that the stewardess sprayed some disinfectants in the flight before landing, but as we went past the auto gate at the airport, there was no health officers or scanners. I can see that travelers actually do expect
the checkup, definitely the checkup and all that. But this is what the Malaysian immigration department say. They say that any person detected to have fever, as displayed on the monitor, will be approached for further examination. But it's very subjective, isn't it? How do you know it can be the carelessness of the staff. Secondly, sometimes you can hide that you are having a fever. You just cover up yourself. So how would you know?
Exactly. And also they said it is expensive to mobilize the resources in view of lower exposure at this point. So one of the travelers added by saying that the best thing now is to adhere to World Health Organization's recommendations. If they actually push to this nation in Malaysia, they probably do something about it. But for now, there are not much things which are done to protect and also to be aware of this really detrimental disease.
Another area in Malaysia that is also garnering a lot of interesting focus. A lot of people are talking about it. It is the alleged tornado.
Yes, this tornado, it's a like you say, it's very interesting because there's a bit of argument between the public and the government because the government apparently they don't try to leak this information saying that it is a tornado, but whereas a lot of people actually witnesses this specific incident in the Klang area. And the people are they actually took the pictures and also videos of it. They were uploaded on YouTube or their own social media website. But then yet the government said it's just caused by severe thunderstorm by strong winds. So they never confirmed that it is a tornado.
Interesting. There is even a YouTube video saying that in Malay I read it. Azan dilaungkan ketika angin puting beliung tornado. It shows that people are so I don't know what's the right word to use. They are so afraid of the tornado. They even chanted some Arabic words.
Yes, because Malaysia is one of the least country which will be affected by all this natural, disaster or hazard. And then when it comes to really strong wind or twister or even further a small tornado will actually frighten all those people around the area.
Some people say that these are actually water ripples, meaning that they are just water sprouts, meaning they are just strong wind that looks like tornado, but it ain't tornado. Apparently so.
Yeah, so that's when now the government is trying to channel to the different directions, saying that it was just a rumor. But then, of course, a lot of people have witnessed this incident. So I don't know. It's just that the conflict between the government and people are always there when it comes to things happen in Malaysia.
But I believe the Malaysia Meteorological Department, because the tornado couldn't exist in country like Malaysia. You have to have the right climate, the right altitude to be able to have a tornado. And usually when tornado strikes, it's even worse than what we are seeing here in the YouTube video.
And of course, the world is truly facing climate change, and then Malaysia, we can't just escape such a predicament for sure.
So around the other side of the world, well, we are being struck by tornado. Hong Kong is being struck by protests by students.
Yes.
And because of the students' protests, the government officials is trying to hold negotiation. They already had the first round of negotiation, but apparently it kind of failed because the student realized that the people that the government authorities are not listening to them. They are just pretend to listening to them.
So then actually the meeting was held, but then we never know how the outcome is more like. But then they tried to talk into the government to voice out their opinions properly. And then they also said, as far as their position is concerned, they're afraid that we can only agree to disagree.
And one area that I was really impressed with the students, because they realized that the government did not hear them and did not really give the proper feedback that they wanted, they actually did a protest all the way to the residence of the chief executive of Hong Kong and demand for his resignation. That is something unheard of for a couple of decades, because when you talk about student movement, especially in the region of ASEAN, Asia, it is very, very rare. Perhaps in South Korea might be different, but in the area, especially in Southeast Asia, besides Indonesia, it's very rare to have students to actually demand for the resignation for the head of states.
Yes, I think I can agree with you that because South Korea or Japan, and the people out there, they're really, I wouldn't say really, but they're pretty much vocal when it comes to their own rights. But whereas the countries like Malaysia or Singapore, or even Hong Kong, they seem pretty calm about the government, and then they are pretty reserved people. But then when they actually stand up for their opinions, that's when the things get serious.
One area that I was really impressed is how transparent it was. So the whole negotiation that took place between the student leaders and the representative of the authorities was telecast live, and it was viewed by a lot of students there. And what happened was the government negotiation team was led by the city's most senior civil servants, Chief Secretary Carrie Lam, and the students were represented by 5 student leaders. Meeting have been called off twice in recent weeks, but when it was started, which was yesterday, the talks, which began at 6 o'clock local time in Malaysia, focus on students' demands that China reconsiders its ruling on how candidates for elections will be chosen. And student leaders retaliated their position that they want Hong Kong leadership elections to be more democratic, which a demand kind of rejected by the representative from the government side.
But I believe that students will still will keep on trying to talking to the government. I don't know our listeners have seen the talk or not, but then there was a clear distinctive differences between these two sides. That one side was the protesters leaders, like one woman and the 4 men in their early 20s wearing jeans and t-shirt. But then t-shirt actually say the words saying that freedom now, so written in English. But the other group, they're all from the government side. They were just representing very professionally the Hong Kong government itself.
So the style also matters. But one thing that it really struck me further is how defensive the government side was. The government was just very vague. At the same time, they can only agree to disagree. In a sense that you can see how much the China leadership has penetrated into the Hong Kong government. Since 1997, Hong Kong has always applied the system of democracy to the extent that they have this idea of one nation, two party system. One nation and two system concept, in a way that when Hong Kong decides whatever that it wants for itself, it will decide by itself. Only recently when China has somehow penetrated into the government wing, and it shows that Hong Kong is no longer democratic, and we don't know how far China will exert its power, but it seems like it will. It definitely will. If there is no foreign intervention, if it will only be a boon towards Hong Kong economy, China will just push forward for its
Definitely.
control.
China has constantly stressed out on the unity and also the, like you mentioned, one country and a two system in this country. And then the power that China has influenced Hong Kong is pretty much very influential in that sense. So that's when even if all those protesters come up with their ideas and then they're being vocal about this, it's hardly can say that the outcome could be negative in the future as well.
So money matters. So in the case of Hong Kong, of course they have achieved an economically advanced, even though they are just an island. They are economic advanced because they are also applying a capitalistic free trade system in a way that other countries are also following suit. So we are seeing European Union negotiating free trade agreement with all the different countries in Southeast Asia. And one of the free trade agreement deal that has been achieving somehow a success is Singapore. And European Union and Singapore have announced the completion of the negotiation towards a free trade agreement after concluding talks on the investment protection portion of the pact.
This is definitely a very good news to Singapore as well as to EU, because Singapore was the EU's 15th largest global trading partner, and then also 5th largest ASEAN trading partner in 2013. So the EU accounted for nearly 10% of Singaporean trade volumes and also bilateral flows of EU, and it's largest contributor of foreign direct investment. So Singapore is the second largest Asian investor into EU right now at the moment.
What do you think of EU? They are actually currently negotiating FTAs with not just Singapore but Vietnam, Thailand, and our own country, Malaysia. Although not many Malaysians are talking about it, surprisingly.
But then definitely with this success, the free trade agreement between the Singapore and the EU, that will definitely influence the ASEAN countries as well in terms of, and then in terms of trading, and then how agreement is done, and then what are the benefits that they can share between these two EU and then Singapore.
This is what the Trade Commissioner Karel de Gucht, I hope I pronounced it correctly, he's representing EU. He said that the conclusion of the chapter marks a very important step in their partnership with Singapore, strengthening their investment relations. Now they have a comprehensive agreement which is a gateway to this important region in Asia. It will help boost economic growth, investment and job creations in the EU. As we all know, EU is also suffering really hard in terms of job creation. Yep. And it will help opening the door for Europe to the ASEAN market with 600 million consumers. ASEAN is definitely opening up, but with Singapore, the market might not be that big. So it has to focus on its neighboring countries like Vietnam, Thailand, and Malaysia. And some of the investment protection chapters that both countries will commit is to ensure a stable and fair regime for foreign investors while preserving the right of the parties to regulate in the public's interest. So under the FTA, the EU exporters will be granted immediate duty-free access to the Singaporean market for all products. That means it's very good for European companies to come into Singapore. They don't have to pay extra taxes or duty in order for them to sell their goods. Let's say you sell, I just give example, you sell a mug for $2 Sing dollar, but because you don't have to go through the duty imposed by Singapore, so one mug might just be a $2 Sing dollar mug. You won't be a price hike up mug. So it shows that prices can be cheaper for consumers to buy as well.
So it is definitely good for people from EU. And then not only it's got the bilateral economic effects, this EU-Singapore free trade agreement has also been seen a regional perspective, like you said, around the Southeast Asia countries. And also with their expanding middle class, this dynamically growing ASEAN economics are key markets for EU's exporters and also comprehensive free trade agreements.
We have to realize that Singapore is EU's 15th largest global trading partner and 5th largest Asian trading partner in 2013. The EU accounted for nearly 10% of Singapore's trade volume. So a lot of Singapore's products are actually not from China but from EU as well.
Especially Singapore will remove restrictions in the car and the financial sector, as well as the barriers in the electronic industry, and also for renewable energies and for public contracts.
There's a lot of tax relief there for EU companies.
And also from EU side, they will abolish all custom duties for products from Singapore over the next 5 years.
I'm just wondering how much of this will benefit the Singaporean society, as much as we look at this as something positive for economic development of EU and also Singapore. But for the society there, how much of it will actually benefit them? That is for economists and people who do analysis on this free trade agreement would have to do that. And FTA with Singapore will be signed and ratified after he has been translated into all official EU languages. That's one area that I want to share with you, because how many EU languages there is? I think they are French, German,
And
English,
English for sure.
and I'm not sure, but I think it's probably more than 4 or 5 languages.
So there will be translated into a few languages already.
I wonder if for Singapore they will be using just English or be translated
Chinese.
or Chinese. Oh, Malay, if they still recognize that as their own national language. Anyway, that's all from us today. We will continue with a lot of discussion on business today. We have the Blast from the Grassroots talking about startups. And of course, we have a Japanese ambassador to share his view on the trade with Malaysia as well as the relationship with Southeast Asia and his view on the ASEAN economic community.
So discussion will be pretty exciting and heating. So please find us at adrianaasian.com, and then don't forget to download our TuneIn app and find us at ASEAN. And also we have social medias at Facebook and YouTube as well.
Stay tuned.